Vanya had 3 hours before she belonged to a monster. 3 hours before Lord Cashin's men would drag her from this tavern, throw her into a carriage, and deliver her to a man whose previous 4 wives had all died under mysterious circumstances. Her mother had sold her to settle a debt, signed the contract herself, smiled while doing it. But there was one way out, one legal loophole her mother hadn't considered. If Vanya married someone else before midnight, the contract would be void. Any marriage, any man. Even a stranger in a tavern who looked at her like she was either his salvation or his doom. She didn't know his name, didn't know why a man dressed in a simple traveler's cloak carried himself like he owned every room he entered. Didn't know why his left hand remained gloved even indoors, or why the other patrons kept their distance as if proximity to him might prove fatal. All she knew was that he was her only chance. So Vanya approached his table, heart slamming against her ribs, and said the words that would change both their lives forever. "Marry me, tonight, please." She didn't know she was begging the Alpha King of Karveth. She didn't know he had secrets far darker than her own, and neither of them understood that this desperate bargain would either save them both or destroy everything they thought they knew about love, curses, and the lies families tell to keep their children caged. The stranger didn't laugh. That was the first thing Vanya noticed. Any other man would have laughed at a woman appearing from nowhere, breathless and terrified, demanding marriage like it was a drink she could order from the bar. But this man simply looked at her with eyes the color of storm clouds, gray and deep and utterly unreadable. "Sit down," he said. His voice was low, rough at the edges, as if he hadn't spoken in days. Vanya's legs nearly buckled with relief as she dropped into the chair across from him. Up close, she could see him more clearly. Strong jaw shadowed with stubble, hair the color of dark honey, pushed back from a face that was almost too striking to be real. A thin scar ran from his left eyebrow into his hairline, and his scent. Even over the tavern's smell of ale and smoke, she caught it. Pine and something metallic, like winter air before a storm. An alpha's scent, unmistakably powerful. "Why?" he asked. Vanya's hands trembled beneath the table. She'd prepared an explanation, something vague about escaping an unwanted arrangement. But the way he watched her, patient and piercing, made lies feel impossible. "I've been sold," she said quietly. "To a man who will kill me. The contract activates at midnight. But if I'm already married to someone else, it becomes void. And you chose me. You're the only one here alone. The only one who looks like he might say yes without asking for something I can't give." Something flickered in his gray eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or recognition. "What makes you think I won't ask for something you can't give?" Vanya's chest tightened. "Will you?" A long pause. He lifted his drink, and she noticed his right hand then. The fingers were bare, but the skin from his knuckles to his wrist looked wrong. Discolored. Almost gray, with a texture that seemed too smooth, too hard. She looked away quickly, not wanting to stare. "I have conditions," he said. "Name them." "You won't ask questions about my past. You won't enter the east wing of my home, and you will not, under any circumstances, remove my glove." Vanya blinked. His glove? Such a strange demand. But she was in no position to argue. "Done," she said. "I have conditions too." His eyebrow rose slightly. "You won't touch my bare skin," Vanya continued, her voice dropping. "Ever. Gloves, clothing, barriers between us always. And you won't ask why." For a moment, something shifted in his expression. Not suspicion. Something closer to understanding. "Done," he said. "Then you'll do it? You'll marry me?" He stood, and Vanya realized just how tall he was. He towered over her, broad-shouldered, radiating a quiet authority that made the entire tavern seem to shrink around him. "There's a priest 3 streets east," he said. "He owes me a favor. We can be married within the hour." Relief crashed through her so intensely she nearly sobbed. "Thank you. I don't even know your name." "Theron," he said. Just that. No surname, no title. "Vanya," she whispered. He extended his ungloved hand, the one with the strange discolored skin, then seemed to remember her condition and withdrew it. "Shall we, Vanya?" She nodded, rising on unsteady legs. As they walked toward the door, she heard whispers erupt behind them. The other patrons had been watching. Of course they had. But the words she caught made no sense. Did she just... with him? Does she not know who that is? Poor girl. She has no idea what she's married herself into. Vanya glanced back, confused. But Theron's hand pressed lightly against her lower back, fabric to fabric, urging her forward. "Ignore them," he murmured. So she did. She had no idea that in less than an hour, she would become the Queen of Carveth. The ceremony took 11 minutes. 11 minutes to speak vows that would bind her to a stranger. 11 minutes to sign documents with a name she'd never written beside before. 11 minutes to change everything. The priest was old, nearly blind, and asked no questions. He simply performed the rites, accepted Theron's coin, and wished them a blessed union with the tired voice of a man who had done this 1,000 times. When it was finished, when the papers were signed and witnessed, Vanya felt the contract with Lord Cashin dissolve like smoke in her chest. The magical binding her mother had placed snapped clean. She was free. She almost collapsed right there in the chapel. "It's done," she breathed. "It actually worked." Theron said nothing. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something calculating behind those storm-gray eyes. "We should go," he said finally, "before anyone realizes." "Go where?" "Home." He led her outside, where a carriage waited. Not the simple cart she'd expected from a traveler in a worn cloak. This carriage was black lacquered wood with silver fittings. 4 massive horses stamped in the moonlight, their coats gleaming like oil. 2 guards flanked the carriage door. They wore armor emblazoned with a crest Vanya recognized immediately. The royal crest of Carveth. Her blood turned to ice. "Theron," she whispered, "why are they wearing the king's colors?" He didn't answer. One of the guards opened the carriage door and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," the guard said. "The castle has been prepared for your return." "Your Majesty." Vanya stopped breathing. Theron turned to look at her, and in that moment, she saw him differently. The quiet authority that had seemed natural for an alpha now revealed itself as something far greater. The way the tavern patrons had kept their distance, the priest who asked no questions, the whispers she'd ignored. "You're the king," she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. The single word hit her like a physical blow. She had begged the Alpha King to marry her, demanded it, made conditions as if she had any right to negotiate with royalty. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice cracked. "Would you have approached me if you'd known?" Vanya opened her mouth, then closed it. No. She wouldn't have. She would have assumed a king would never agree to marry a desperate, cursed girl in a tavern. She would have given up and let Cashin's men take her. "I thought not," Theron said quietly. He gestured toward the carriage. "Get in. We have much to discuss, and the road to the castle is long." Vanya's legs felt wooden as she climbed inside. The interior was velvet and shadow, far more luxurious than anything she'd ever touched. Theron settled across from her, his long frame taking up most of the opposite seat. The carriage lurched into motion. "You married me knowing who you were," Vanya said slowly. "The Alpha King. You could have anyone. Princesses, noble women. Why would you agree to this?" Theron's jaw tightened. In the flickering carriage lantern, she could see the strange discoloration on his hand more clearly now. It wasn't just his knuckles. It extended past his wrist, disappearing beneath his sleeve. "I have my reasons," he said. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting tonight." Vanya's fear was rapidly transforming into something else: frustration, confusion, and beneath it all, a growing awareness that she had stepped into something far more complicated than a simple escape. "You said you had conditions," she pressed. "No questions about your past. Stay out of the East Wing. Never remove your glove." She leaned forward slightly. "What are you hiding?" Theron's eyes met hers, and for just a moment she saw something behind the cold control. Pain. Deep and old and utterly exhausted. "The same thing you are," he said quietly. "A curse I didn't choose and can't escape." Before she could respond, the carriage passed through a massive gate. Torches blazed to life on either side. And through the window, Vanya saw her new home rising against the night sky. The castle of Karveth, her prison, her sanctuary, her husband's secret-filled domain. She was no longer a debtor's daughter running from a death contract. She was a queen, and she had absolutely no idea what that meant. The castle swallowed her whole. Vanya had never seen anything so vast, so cold, so deliberately intimidating. Stone corridors stretched in every direction, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows on walls lined with ancient tapestries. Servants appeared and vanished like ghosts, bowing deeply but never meeting her eyes, and everyone called her Your Majesty. The words felt like a costume she hadn't agreed to wear. Theron walked beside her, close but never touching, guiding her through the labyrinth with the ease of someone who had memorized every stone. He'd removed his traveling cloak, revealing clothes far finer than she'd realized. Dark fabric trimmed with silver thread, the king's sigil embroidered over his heart. "Your chambers are in the West Wing," he said, "connected to mine by a shared sitting room, but you'll have complete privacy. The staff has been instructed to attend to your every need." "And the East Wing?" Vanya asked. Theron's stride didn't falter, but something in his scent shifted. That metallic edge sharpened. "Forbidden," he said simply, "as we agreed." They climbed a spiraling staircase, and Vanya's exhaustion began to weigh on her. The terror of the past hours, the desperate gamble, the shock of discovering her husband's identity. It was all crashing down at once. Theron seemed to notice. His pace slowed. "You're tired," he observed. "I've been running for 3 days," Vanya admitted. "And before that, I spent 2 weeks locked in my mother's cellar." She hadn't meant to say that. The words escaped before she could stop them. Theron stopped walking entirely. When he turned to face her, his expression was no longer cold. It was something rawer. "Your mother locked you in a cellar?" "To keep me from escaping before the contract activated." Vanya's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking again. "She needed the money Lord Cashin promised. I was just the payment." For a long moment, Theron said nothing. His gray eyes searched her face as if looking for the lie he expected to find. When he didn't find one, something in his posture changed. The rigid formality softened by a single degree. "You won't be locked anywhere in this castle," he said quietly. "You have my word." Vanya nodded, not trusting her voice. They continued walking until they reached a set of ornate double doors. Theron pushed them open to reveal a chamber that stole her breath. The room was enormous. A canopied bed draped in deep blue velvet dominated one wall. A fireplace crackled with warmth. Windows overlooked a moonlit garden far below. There were bookshelves, a writing desk, and a sitting area with plush chairs. It was the most beautiful room she had ever seen. "This is mine?" she whispered. "Yours," Theron confirmed. "The wardrobe has been stocked with clothes that should fit. The bathing chamber is through that door. If you need anything, pull the cord by the bed and a servant will attend you." Vanya stepped inside, running her gloved fingers along the carved bedpost. Real. This was real. "There's something else," Theron said from the doorway. "We should discuss the physical requirements of this marriage." Vanya's stomach dropped. She turned to face him, her back pressed against the bedpost. "You said you wouldn't touch my skin," she reminded him. And I won't. But the court will expect an heir eventually. More immediately, they'll expect the marriage to be consummated. He paused, his jaw tight. For tonight, we don't need to do anything. But we do need to share a room. The servants will talk if we don't. And those whispers will reach people who would use any excuse to challenge the legitimacy of this union. You want me to sleep in your chambers? I want you to be seen entering my chambers. You can return here afterward through the connecting door. No one will know. It was practical, political, completely devoid of any expectation that she actually share his bed. Vanya exhaled slowly. All right. Theron nodded. I'll send someone to collect you in an hour. That should give you time to bathe and rest. He turned to leave, then paused. Vanya. Yes? The conditions you set. No bare skin. No asking why. His voice dropped lower. I won't press you tonight. But eventually, we'll need to trust each other with our secrets. This arrangement only works if we're honest about what we're hiding. Vanya's heart hammered. If she told him the truth, that her touch was lethal, that every man who had ever tried to claim her had died screaming, he would annul the marriage immediately. She would be back in Cashin's hands by dawn. Eventually, she agreed, but not tonight. A flicker of respect crossed his eyes, or perhaps recognition of a kindred spirit in deception. Not tonight, he agreed. Then he was gone. Vanya sank onto the edge of the bed, her whole body trembling. She was married to the Alpha King, living in a castle full of secrets, bound to a man whose body showed signs of something deeply, terribly wrong. And in 1 hour she would have to enter his chambers and pretend that everything was fine. She looked down at her gloved hands, remembering all the blood they had caused, all the death her curse had brought. What have I done? She whispered to the empty room. The fire crackled. No answer came. The hour passed too quickly. Vanya bathed in water that smelled of lavender and something unfamiliar, something sweet and calming that she suspected was meant to settle her nerves. She dressed in the nightclothes laid out for her, a long silk gown with sleeves that covered her to the wrists, and matching gloves so thin they felt like a second skin. The servants had thought of everything. When the knock came, Vanya's heart nearly stopped. A young maid stood in the doorway, eyes downcast. His Majesty is ready for you, Your Highness. Your Highness. Another title that didn't fit. Vanya followed the maid through the connecting sitting room, a space filled with books and comfortable chairs and the faint scent of pine that she was beginning to associate with Theron. Then, through another door into the king's chambers. The room was larger than hers, but somehow less ornate. Darker colors, fewer decorations. A massive bed dominated the space, but what caught Vanya's attention was the fire burning in the hearth. It was enormous, roaring, producing heat that should have been unbearable. And standing beside it, wearing only loose sleeping trousers and an unbuttoned shirt, was Theron. Vanya's breath caught. She had known he was handsome, but seeing him like this, half undressed, firelight playing across the planes of his chest, she realized handsome was an understatement. He was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, dangerous and precise. Then she noticed his skin. The discoloration she'd seen on his right hand wasn't limited to his hand. It spread up his right forearm, disappeared under his sleeve, and reappeared on the left side of his chest. Gray patches with that same strange texture. In the firelight, they almost seemed to glitter, like stone. Theron saw her staring and slowly buttoned his shirt. The fire helps, he said quietly. Slows it down. Slows what down? He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured to the bed. You can take whichever side you prefer. I won't touch you. Vanya approached cautiously, climbing onto the bed and staying close to the edge. The mattress was impossibly soft. The pillows smelled like him. Theron extinguished most of the candles but left the fire burning. Then he settled on the opposite side of the bed, a careful distance between them. Silence stretched. You're afraid of me, he observed. I'm afraid of everything right now. Fair enough. A pause. For what it's worth, you have nothing to fear from me. I didn't marry you to hurt you. Vanya turned her head to look at him. In the dim light, his profile was sharp, almost sculptural. Then why did you marry me? Theron was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Because you reminded me of someone, he finally said. Someone I failed to save. The raw grief in his voice stole her breath. Who? She whispered. My sister. His mouth pressed into a hard line. She was sold to a brutal lord when she was 16. I was too young, too weak to stop it. By the time I became king, by the time I had the power to rescue her, he stopped. She was already dead. Vanya's chest ached. I'm sorry. When I saw you in that tavern, desperate and terrified, willing to marry a stranger to escape, I saw her. I saw every choice I should have made, and didn't. He turned his head to meet her gaze. I couldn't save Marin, but I could save you. The confession hung between them, heavy and honest. So, this marriage, Vanya said slowly. It's penance? It's purpose. His voice dropped lower. And perhaps, if I'm honest, it's hope. I've been alone for a very long time, Vanya. A king without a queen, a man without a mate. I didn't expect to find either in a tavern at midnight. She didn't know what to say. This man, this powerful, secretive, damaged king, had married her because she reminded him of his dead sister. Because he wanted to save someone after failing the one person who mattered most. It wasn't love. It wasn't even attraction. But it was real. And somehow that made it more terrifying than any alternative. What's happening to your skin? She asked quietly. The gray patches, the texture, it's spreading, isn't it? Theron's expression shuddered. Yes. Is it killing you? The silence was answer enough. How long do you have? Months. Maybe less. He said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. The curse takes hold slowly at first, then accelerates. Eventually, my heart will turn to stone completely. And then? He didn't finish. Vanya sat up, staring at him. There has to be a cure, a counterspell. Something. There was supposed to be. His voice turned bitter. My fated mate. The one person whose love could halt the curse. But she died 3 years ago. At least, that's what I was told. You don't believe it? I don't know what to believe anymore. Flames hissed in the hearth. Shadows danced across the walls. Vanya lay back down, her mind spinning. She had married a dying king. A man cursed to turn to stone. A man who believed his only hope for salvation was already dead. And she was hiding a curse of her own. One that killed anyone who touched her. What a pair they made. Theron, she whispered. Yes? I'm sorry. For whatever you've suffered. For whatever brought you to this. Another long pause. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. So am I. They lay in silence after that. 2 broken people sharing a bed without touching, each carrying secrets that could destroy them both. Vanya didn't expect to sleep. But exhaustion claimed her anyway, and her last thought before darkness took her was that his scent, pine and metal and something achingly lonely, was becoming familiar. And that terrified her most of all. Weeks passed, then months. Vanya learned the rhythms of the castle like a new language. Breakfast in her chambers, walks in the western gardens, afternoons in the library, where she devoured books on Karveth's history, its politics, and its magic, and evenings with Theron. They dined together now, a habit that had started accidentally and become routine. He would tell her about his day, the endless negotiations and disputes and decisions that came with ruling a kingdom. She would listen, ask questions, offer perspectives he hadn't considered. He started seeking her opinions, valuing them. You have a strategic mind, he told her one evening, something like surprise in his voice. My mother taught me to anticipate threats, Vanya replied. She just didn't realize she was the biggest one. Theron almost smiled. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges, making him look younger. Vanya found herself wanting to see that almost smile more often. The nights grew easier too. They still shared his chambers for appearances, still maintained their careful distance, but the silence between them had become comfortable rather than tense. Sometimes they talked until the fire burned low. Sometimes they simply existed in the same space, reading or thinking, drawing peace from each other's presence. And Vanya noticed things. The way Theron always positioned himself between her and any perceived threat. The way he remembered small details she mentioned, her favorite foods appearing at dinner, books she'd expressed interest in materializing in her chambers. The way his gray eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking. She noticed the curse progressing too. The stone patches had spread past his shoulder now, creeping toward his neck. Some mornings he moved stiffly, as if his joints were hardening. He spent more time near fires, seeking warmth that his body could no longer generate. He was dying slowly, right in front of her, and there was nothing she could do. "You could tell him," a voice in her head whispered. "Tell him about your curse. Maybe together you could find answers." But every time she considered it, fear choked the words. Her curse killed. Every man who had ever tried to claim her had died in agony. If Theron touched her bare skin, if the mate bond tried to form, he would die even faster than the stone was taking him. She couldn't risk it, so she kept her gloves on, kept her distance, kept her secrets, and fell in love with him anyway. She didn't realize it at first. The feeling crept in gradually, like dawn breaking. The way her heart lifted when she heard his footsteps. The way his voice had become her favorite sound. The way she lay awake at night, listening to him breathe, wishing she could close the distance between them. By the time she recognized it for what it was, the love was already too deep to cut out. "I love him," she thought one morning, watching him read a report by the window, sunlight catching the sharp line of his jaw. "I love him, and I can never tell him." Because telling him would mean explaining her curse, and explaining her curse would mean admitting that she could never give him what he needed. A mate, a true bond, the love that might have saved him. She was poison, dressed as a queen. Then the healer came to see her. "Your Majesty," the old woman said gently after the examination. "You're with child." The floor seemed to vanish beneath Vanya's feet. "That's impossible," Vanya whispered. We've never..." But then she remembered. 6 weeks ago, the night of the winter festival, when they'd both drunk too much wine and the distance between them had finally collapsed. They'd kept their gloves on, kept fabric between their skin, but they'd been together in every other way. She hadn't thought it would be enough. "The pregnancy is progressing normally," the healer continued. "The child is healthy." Vanya pressed a hand to her stomach, stunned beyond words. She was carrying Theron's child, a child who might inherit her curse. Or his. She had to tell him. About the baby. About everything. That night, after dinner, after the servants had left them alone, Vanya gathered every shred of courage she possessed. "Theron, I need to tell you something." He looked up from the documents he'd been reviewing, his gray eyes immediately alert. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything." She took a shaky breath. "I'm pregnant." The document slipped from his fingers. For a long moment he just stared at her, his expression shifting through shock, confusion, and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. "You're certain?" "The healer confirmed it today." Theron stood slowly, crossing the room toward her. He stopped just short of touching her, his hands hovering as if unsure where to land. "A child," he breathed. "We're having a child." "Yes." And then something broke in his face. The careful control he always maintained crumbled away, and what remained was raw, unguarded joy. "I never thought I would..." He stopped, his voice thick. "I assumed the curse would take me before I could ever..." "Theron." He looked at her, and Vanya saw tears in his eyes. The Alpha King of Karveth, this powerful, guarded, dying man, was crying. "I love you," he said. The words struck with the force of lightning. "I know I shouldn't. I know this was supposed to be an arrangement, but somewhere between the tavern and now, I fell in love with you, Vanya. Completely. Irreversibly." He reached up, almost touching her face, then remembered and let his hand drop. "I love you." Vanya's heart soared and shattered at the same time. "I love you too," she whispered. The words escaped before she could stop them. "I've loved you for months." Theron's face lit up with something like wonder. Then his expression changed. His hand flew to his chest. His eyes went wide with pain. The color drained from his face, leaving him gray as ash. "Theron?" Vanya reached for him. "What's wrong?" He tried to speak, but no sound came out. His body convulsed, his legs buckled, and the Alpha King collapsed at her feet. "Theron!" She dropped to her knees beside him, terrified to touch him, but more terrified not to. Through his shirt, she could see the stone spreading rapidly now, racing across his chest toward his throat. "Help!" she screamed. "Someone help me!" Guards burst through the door. Servants came running, but Vanya couldn't hear any of them over the roaring in her ears. She had told him she loved him, and now he was dying because of it. The healers worked through the night. Vanya stood in the corner of Theron's chambers, watching them pour potions down his throat, press warm stones against the spreading gray, chant words in languages she didn't recognize. Nothing worked. The stone kept spreading. By dawn, it had reached his jaw. "We've done everything we can," the head healer said grimly. "Whatever curse this is, it's beyond our abilities to counter." "Then find someone whose abilities are enough," Vanya snapped. "A witch. A sorcerer. Someone." The healer hesitated. "There is one, a blood witch in the northern mountains. They say she can break any curse for a price." "Send for her. Whatever the price, I'll pay it." The healer bowed and left. Vanya moved to Theron's bedside, staring down at the man she loved. His breathing was shallow, his skin cold despite the roaring fire. The stone had frozen half his face into an expression of pain. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is my fault. I told you I loved you, and now you're—" She couldn't finish. The Blood Witch arrived 3 days later. She was younger than Vanya expected, with sharp dark eyes and silver rings on every finger. She walked into the king's chambers like she owned them, took one look at Theron, and laughed. "So the rumors are true," she said. "The curse of Karveth finally caught a king." "Can you break it?" Vanya demanded. The witch circled the bed slowly, examining Theron from every angle. "This curse wasn't designed to be broken. It was designed to prevent the kings of this bloodline from ever forming a true mate bond. The moment they confess love, the moment the bond tries to form, their hearts turn to stone." "There must be something." "There is one thing." The witch's eyes fixed on Vanya. "A fated mate. A true mate. Not just a spoken bond. The real thing. If his fated mate declared her love, if she completed the bond, it would override the curse." "He told me his fated mate died years ago." The witch's smile turned sharp. "Did she? Or was he lied to?" A chill crawled down her spine. "What do you mean?" "I know about you, Queen Vanya." The witch stepped closer. "I know about your curse. The blood curse that supposedly kills any man who tries to claim you. Tell me, how many have died?" "3," Vanya whispered. "Before Theron. 3 men tried to claim me, and all of them died in agony." The witch finished. "Burned from the inside out. Classic symptoms of a blood curse." She tilted her head. "Except blood curses don't work that way. They can't kill. They can only bind." Vanya stared at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your curse isn't what you think it is. Someone placed a binding on you, yes. But the deaths? Those weren't caused by your touch." The witch's voice dropped lower. They were caused by someone who wanted you to believe your touch was deadly. Someone who wanted to keep you isolated, unmarriageable, completely under their control. The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. Who? Vanya breathed. Who had access to you after each of those men tried to claim you? Who benefited from you believing you were poison? Who locked you in a cellar to keep you from escaping a marriage contract? The answer crashed over Vanya like a wave of ice water. My mother. Your mother, the witch confirmed, Ravenna of Thornwick, one of the most skilled blood witches of her generation. She bound your natural mate sense when you were a child, then killed anyone who got close enough to trigger it. She wanted you dependent, controllable, profitable. Vanya stumbled backward, gripping the bedpost for support. But why would she sell me to Kashin then? Because Kashin paid her more than any other suitor, and she knew you'd die there eventually, taking her secrets with you. The witch paused. She didn't expect you to run. She certainly didn't expect you to marry the one man whose fated mate she'd tried to convince was dead. The implication took a moment to land. Then it detonated. Me, Vanya whispered. I'm his fated mate. The bond tried to form 3 years ago when you came of age. Your mother felt it. She knew that if you and Theron ever met, ever touched, the truth would come out. So she sent word to the Karveth court that his fated mate had died of plague. And Theron believed it. He had no reason not to. Vanya looked at Theron's frozen face, at the stone that had nearly claimed him entirely. Her mother had done this. Her mother had cursed her, killed innocent men, lied to a king, and nearly destroyed them both. All to maintain control over a daughter she saw as property. Rage ignited in Vanya's chest like a wildfire. How do I save him? She demanded. Complete the bond. Touch him, skin to skin, and declare yourself his mate. Your touch isn't deadly. It never was. And the fated bond will override his curse. But I've never. Vanya stared at her gloved hands. I've spent my whole life avoiding touch. I don't know how to. Then learn fast, the witch said flatly. Because he has hours, not days. Once the stone reaches his heart, nothing will save him. She turned to leave. Wait, Vanya called. Why are you helping me? What's your price? The witch paused at the door. Your mother killed my sister. One of the 3 men she murdered to maintain your curse was meant to be my sister's fated mate. They never had the chance to bond. She died of heartbreak within the year. Her dark eyes glittered with cold satisfaction. My price is watching Ravenna's perfect plan crumble, and when you're ready to make her pay for what she's done, send word. I'll be waiting. Then she was gone. Vanya stood alone with her dying husband, her mind racing. Everything she'd believed about herself was a lie. Her curse was fake. Her mother was a murderer. And the only thing standing between Theron and death was Vanya's willingness to do the one thing she'd spent her entire life avoiding. Touch him. With shaking hands, she reached for her gloves. Vanya's hands trembled as she peeled off the first glove. The fabric slid away, revealing skin she hadn't shown anyone in years. Pale, unmarked, ordinary. She'd expected it to look different somehow, to bear visible evidence of the curse she'd believed she carried. But there was nothing. Just a hand. Just skin. Just the truth she'd been denied her entire life. She removed the second glove and let both fall to the floor. Theron lay motionless on the bed, the stone having claimed everything except a small patch of skin near his heart. His chest barely rose and fell. His lips were gray, his eyes were closed, frozen mid-blink. I'm here, Vanya whispered, moving closer. I'm right here. She climbed onto the bed beside him, her pulse thundering in her ears. Her entire life of avoiding touch, years upon years of believing she was poison. And now she had to undo all of it in a single moment. I don't know if you can hear me, she said softly. But I need you to know something. Everything I believed about myself was wrong. The curse that kept me isolated, that made me afraid to touch anyone, it was a lie. My mother created it to control me. She killed those men herself and let me believe I was responsible. A tear slipped down her cheek. She told your court that your fated mate was dead. She let you spend 3 years believing you had no hope. But I'm here, Theron. I'm alive. And I'm yours. Vanya reached out with shaking fingers. The moment her bare hand touched his cheek, something electric surged through her. A connection she'd never felt before, primal and overwhelming, like a locked door finally swinging open. The mate bond, the real one, the one her mother had suppressed for over 2 decades, roared to life inside her chest. And it hurt. Not the pain of destruction, but the pain of becoming. Of 2 broken pieces finally finding each other and fusing into something whole. I claim you, Vanya gasped through the sensation. As my mate, my husband, my king. I claim you with everything I am and everything I have. I love you, Theron. I love you. The words echoed through the room. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then light exploded from where their skin connected. Golden light, warm and brilliant, spreading across Theron's body like sunrise chasing away night. Everywhere it touched, the stone receded. Gray flesh became warm skin. Rigid joints softened into living muscle. The frozen expression on his face melted away, replaced by something peaceful. Vanya sobbed with relief, her hand still pressed to his cheek, feeling warmth return to skin that had been cold for so long. The light faded, and Theron opened his eyes. Vanya. Her name emerged as a rasp, but it was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. You're touching me. I'm touching you, she confirmed, laughing and crying at once. And you're not dead. Neither of us is dead. Theron's hand rose slowly, hesitantly, and covered hers where it rested on his cheek. Skin to skin. Warmth to warmth. How? He breathed. Long story. Vanya leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. Short version. My mother is a murderer, my curse was fake, and I'm your fated mate. Theron blinked. Then, despite everything, despite the confusion and the lingering weakness and the impossibility of what she'd just said, he laughed. The sound broke something open inside her. My fated mate, he repeated wonderingly. His thumb stroked across her cheekbone. I thought you were dead. For 3 years I thought, I know. She wanted you to believe that. She wanted us both broken and alone. Theron's expression hardened. Where is she now? I don't know. But when I find her, Vanya's jaw tightened. She'll answer for everything. They found Ravenna 2 weeks later. She'd fled to a coastal town, attempting to book passage to a distant continent. Vanya's guards intercepted her at the docks, dragging her back to Carveth in chains. The trial was brief. The Blood Witch testified about the murders. Palace healers confirmed the nature of the binding that had been placed on Vanya as a child. Witnesses came forward, people from Vanya's hometown who had always suspected something was wrong, but had been too afraid of Ravenna to speak. And Vanya herself stood before the court, showing them the scars her mother had left, not on her body, but on her soul. She made me believe I was a monster, Vanya said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. She killed innocent men and let me carry the guilt. She sold me to a lord who would have tortured me to death, and she did it all for money and control. Ravenna showed no remorse. Even facing execution, she sneered at her daughter. You were always weak, she spat. Just like your father. I made you stronger. No, Vanya replied quietly. You tried to make me nothing. You failed. Ravenna was executed at dawn the next day. Vanya didn't watch. She didn't need to. Justice had been served, and she had more important things to focus on now, like the child growing inside her, like the husband waiting in their chambers, like the life she was finally free to live. The throne room was filled with music and laughter. Vanya stood beside Theron, her hand resting on the swell of her belly, watching their kingdom celebrate the announcement of the coming heir. Nobles and commoners alike had gathered, united in joy for the first time in living memory. The curse was broken. not just for Theron, but for his entire bloodline. Their children would never suffer the fate of their ancestors. They would be free to love openly, completely, without fear of turning to stone. "You're smiling," Theron observed, leaning close to her ear. "It suits you." "I have reasons to smile now." "Do you?" His hand found hers, fingers intertwining, skin to skin. "Name them." Vanya turned to look at him. The color had fully returned to his face. The stone patches were gone, leaving only healthy flesh. He looked younger somehow, as if the curse had been aging him from the inside out. "You're alive," she said. "I'm free. Our child is healthy, and I get to touch you whenever I want." She demonstrated by rising on her toes and pressing a kiss to his lips. Theron deepened the kiss, one hand sliding into her hair, the other resting on her belly where their daughter kicked in response. Daughter. The healers had confirmed last week, strong and healthy. They'd named her Maren, after Theron's sister, the one he couldn't save. The reason he'd saved Vanya instead. The East Wing had been opened now. What Vanya had once imagined as a chamber of horrors turned out to be a memorial. Portraits of every king who had fallen to the curse, including the empty frame that had been prepared for Theron. She'd had it removed. In its place hung a new painting, Theron and Vanya together, alive and whole, with space left for the children who would follow. The curse would claim no more kings. "I never thanked you properly," Vanya murmured against his lips, "for marrying a stranger in a tavern." "You never needed to." Theron pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "You saved me, Vanya. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other." He smiled then, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "We saved each other." The celebration continued around them, but Vanya barely noticed. She was too focused on this moment. This man. This life she never expected to have. She'd walked into that tavern desperate and afraid, convinced she was a monster who destroyed everything she touched. She'd walked out as a queen, and somewhere between midnight and forever, she'd found something she never thought she deserved. Love. Real love. The kind that broke curses and healed wounds and built kingdoms from the ashes of broken dreams. "Marry me tonight," she'd begged a stranger. She hadn't known he was the Alpha King, but she was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, fate had known exactly what it was doing. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it and would like to support the channel, hit the subscribe button. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I read every single one, and they mean more than you know.